Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor, and thank you for coming to my channel, Pioneer Spirit. So, topic today, something that's been I've been reviewing for some time now, and poring over videos on this question, and Canadian and American military recruiting is at an all-time low since 1973. And I'm like, okay, I'm hearing more and more of this, more shows coming out, whether it's from like your mainstream media or, just people like myself making these videos. This is what we're hearing. So I'm thinking, why and how low is it? Now, I'm going to report, like, I'm from Canada, so I find it a topic of interest in the Canadian military. Being a military, I guess, I'm a hobbyist at it, and is it an interest for me, the military? Yeah, I like looking into it and figuring out what's going on. So they say that now Canada right now is having a massive shortage. It works out to be, right now, the CAF, the Canadian Armed Forces, their numbers of personnel are down by 10,000. That also, that can equate to 1 in 10 positions in the Canadian Armed Forces is not filled. So, we're told by the generals, and just going by what they're saying, they're like, that's not good. When your military is down by 10%, that's not good. You're not combat effective. You're not combat ready. You're not. You can't do. Especially in Canada, I can't imagine how they're able to even go and do peacekeeping. I don't know with those kind of the lower numbers. America's suffering the same problem as well too. Just the amount of videos that have been coming out in the last 2 years of why is this down? And I'm making this video too because I'm thoroughly disappointed. And if you are in one of these categories watching this, I'm going to come out with solutions here to help you. But I watch videos from mostly Canada and the United States about the recruitment to the military problem. And you have current recruiters, Canadian Americans, they'll make videos as to, well, why? Why are we short tens of thousands of people? And so you got recruiters, and you'll have retired and current generals. And you'll have current and retired, well, mostly retired politicians. Current politicians, they're a whole new breed. But you have these people coming out, and you'll watch shows, and it's after like 2 minutes, I'm just like zoning out. It's gobbledygook. You're all coming out with gobbledygook. Why? And your solutions. You are missing the elephant in the room. Okay, I have yet to see any video talk about these talking points. Why are people joining the military in Canada, America, and I know UK has these problems as well too. So why are these three nations people don't want to join? Well, and these are the points that these recruiters, the retired and colonel, the retired and current officers, mainly generals and retired politicians, they're not touching these points. Okay. If you're 18, you're graduating high school, or maybe you're just, you're kind of floating around a little bit. Maybe you're 20 and you're trying to figure out your life, and someone says, well, join the military. Well, okay, I'm 18, and then this is why. These are the points I'm telling you, people. You're a recruiter, you're watching this. Here's why. Trust. Trust is at an all-time low in politicians, absolutely, definitely in politicians, and the institutions, the government in general, really, but a lot of institutions as well, the branches of government, but we could just say government in general and politicians. Trust is at an all-time low. It's probably worse than the generation of people that were, 18 and in their early 20s in 1973. And it comes back to, I'm 18 and, I got all this, the recruiter telling me, all the sunshine and lollipops of joining the military. And then what they'll come out with, and they'll say, and this is a problem. You have, and if it can, if you can answer it to them, that to change their hearts, change their minds, they view joining the military, or anyone really. I don't know if it's, in Canada you can join up to the age of 57. So you have to change the hearts and minds of people. You have to regain trust. Okay, now people are saying, well, if I join the military, okay, yeah, I get all this. And right now, yeah, you join the CAF, the Canadian Armed Forces. I've looked into this a lot more. Pay is, I think, pretty good. A year out, or a year into the CAF, I mean, what's it, like 30, almost about 39,000. And, you get promoted through the ranks. These guys, corporal sergeants, they're making good money. I think it's good money when you actually look at that. But it's a hard, I think it's a good selling point, but it's hard when the major factor of trust is gone. And they'll say, well, why? As a recruiter, why? Or an officer, why? Why? Well, they look at Afghan and Iraq, and they just go, they feel like they're, and even a guy my age, 51, looks and goes, we feel like we were sold on a war that wasn't based on, it's morally and ethically wasn't right. Like, I can still remember Colin Powell, Colin Powell, I guess his name was, coming out saying, Iraq has, weapons of mass destruction. We heard all that, and we're like, okay, I guess we got to go stop this. But it was all. It seems like a lie. Iraq and Afghanistan, especially when you look at it and go, well, we got into Iraq and Afghanistan, I get because of 9/11, and now that you're 18, you weren't even born when 9/11 happened. Okay, so now these 18-year-olds are looking, going, well, Iraq and Afghanistan, what was the purpose? What was the purpose of Iraq and Afghanistan? Nearly 20 years. And how many people, and I have to watch my words here because, YouTube and whatnot, how many people in an almost 20-year span were deleted? How many people are permanently in a wheelchair now because of Iraq and Afghanistan? How many? In the millions? 500,000? I don't know. Was that justified? Was it justified? So young people are thinking, okay, I join. I get it. I think pay is good. I think the benefits, vacation time, the opportunities for education, I think that's all good. I think that's good. But it's hard to sell that when your heart and mind is saying, look, I join. Are you going to send me to another Iraq and Afghanistan? Or I just feel like it's a war with no purpose. That's what people are thinking. And I say mostly 18 to 24, but you could be, I think the U.S. military is 35 age limit to go in. Canada, it's 57. People are saying the trust level, the purpose. Why are you going to send me there? So people are like, I don't want to go because of that. So that's the main point. I would really like to have recruiters, military brass, and politicians address is you need to reinstill trust in the citizens to become a soldier. Okay. And so that leads to, I might get back to the more points on this, but that leads to another thing is, let's say you're 18, 20, whatever, and you want to join it. And like I just mentioned, combat. Whew, shit. I'm 18 and I don't want to go into combat. I want to join the military, but I'm not, I kind of like the structure of the military, and okay, I like the pay and the benefits, and and educational opportunities, but I don't want to go to combat. Well, I don't hear many recruiters talk about this other talking point, selling point. You're trying to sell this to people. So listen to me as a recruiter. In Canada, there's 101 current career opportunities in the CAF. And, they're not all combat. So you could say to a young person, hey, you want to be a dentist, a dental hygienist. There's lots of career opportunities that won't put you on the front line because people are worried. Hey, I'm afraid of being deleted. I'm afraid of combat. I don't like guns or something. I don't know. You have to be trained, I think, in a firearms to be in the military. But maybe you just want to maybe you're saying, hey, I want to be a dentist, dental hygienist. Mechanic or something like that, cook, something that isn't going to put you on the front lines. This needs to be sold too and say, look, there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of those jobs are needed. Those careers are needed in the military. And you could say to them, look, you join as a dentist. I use those examples. You could work on a base within Canada, United States, UK. There could be deployment opportunities. Excuse me. But how many dentists are called upon on the base to pick up their rifle and they're not going to be put out into combat. They're not going to be put on patrols and whatnot. I think they're pretty safe. I would go into that. Recruiters, you're going to know more about it than I would, but I'm fairly certain if I'm a dentist working on a military base that's on deployment, I'm pretty sure you're pretty safe, right? You got to be safe. So recruiters are, push that. Say, hey, look, there's a lot of other careers. There's a ton of careers. Like the Canadian military has currently 101 careers. And they're not all combat roles. They're not frontline, your life's in danger sort of thing. There's a lot of jobs that don't require combat. So, I don't hear that as a talking point. That never really seems to be like a talking point. So to sell that, I mean, and again to sell, I think it is a good thing to sell the pay, the benefits, even as someone my own age, you look at it and go, wow, this seems pretty good. I mean, I think it's decent, all that part of it. You do hear people complain about it, but I'm like, well, they're like, I can get this job in a civilian career and it's, pays more or whatnot. Yeah, maybe. I think unless you massively screw up in the military, a lot more job security. Like you could maybe get a job in the military as an IT person, or maybe you go, maybe I'll go to IBM because IBM maybe is only a 6-month contract. Maybe they let you go. It's a lot more difficult, or a lot more easier, I guess, to get fired from perhaps a privately run company. But then again, like maybe if someone's really worried about combat, even if you are a dentist being deployed, I mean, it could be nerve-wracking. So you don't join then. If you're really that nervous about combat, then don't join the military, right? But I mean, sell those points. I think the pay is good. I got a whole list of things here I'm just reading off. Again, trust. Here's another thing. So I want to talk about why I think recruitment levels are down. I'll cite Canada because I am a Canadian, so I've experienced this. And I hope I can talk about this too much. I might use a little innuendo, again, because of YouTube and whatever you can talk about. So I'm going to say recruitment levels are down as well too. Plus, people that were fired or quit because of Mr. 19. Okay, basically what's happened in the world since 2020, right? Mr. 19, read between the lines. A lot of people in Canada were fired for not complying with the politicians And this comes down, I mean, this is the trust in politicians. A lot of people were fired. Okay, and again, poring over videos of the Canadian military, there was a lot of people that were told, if you don't get Mr. 19, if you don't wear, put the, that over your face there, there's reprimands and disciplinary meetings. And finally, people were just, if you're not going to comply with the politicians' Mr. 19 mandates, you're gone. So a lot of people, a lot of good people, not just in the military, were let go from their jobs. At a point in time, too, we're talking well beyond 2020. We're 2021. Things started letting up in 2022 because of a certain rally that happened in Canada's capital. But, a lot of good people were kicked out. Whatever your profession, healthcare workers, you couldn't be private sector, truck driver in Canada. I mean, there were so many federal jobs and provincial jobs, jobs in general, where they lost a lot of good people because of Mr. 19 mandates. And I'll focus on the military because this is the military podcast that I'm doing today. And there's a lot of people who just said, no, I don't want this. Like the flu shot was never mandatory in the Canadian military. And I spent 20 years in 7 hospitals here in Canada, and not one time from 1996 to 2016, almost 2017, so really just over 20 years, was the flu shot ever mandatory. And I never got a flu shot. I just, I don't know, if I got sick, I stayed at home a couple days, paid sick time, did what I had to do, got through it, was fine. That's, you all pulled through. You want to talk about, digress a little bit here. I believe it was 1996. I remember being in a bar with my friends watching Michael Jordan win. He freaking scored, and he played in the finals with the flu. The guy's dripping in sweat. Did the other players say, "Ooh, I don't want him touching me," or any spit flying, or no? I mean, that's how it was. People just did what they had to do. Stay home, or you troopered through it. But something happened here in 2020, and that was trust again eroded. So, I talked earlier about Iran, Afghanistan, young people, or again, people in Canada. If you're up to 57, you can join. Trust in going, well, I don't know. Was Iraq, Afghanistan a waste of time? That's, they didn't trust. A lot of trust was lost over that. Was it a justified, moral, ethical war? A lot of people would say no. And so then rolls along 2020, Mr. 19 comes along, and people are told, like, if you don't have this medical procedure, you're gone. You're fired. It's like, and okay, because at first, everyone's like, hey, what's going on here? Even myself, I'm like, April 2020, I'm like, oh my God, batten down the hatches, 500 pounds of rice and 200 pounds of beans. Like, and I'm not kidding, that, like, there's a lot of stuff here I had. And, and it's like, well, June 2020 rolls around and people are like, it seems okay. And then by August 2020, it's like, oh, hell broke loose. And then you got politicians telling you what you have to do. You can't do. I don't have to get into it. You all know what we went through. But the worst thing that any politician could ever do was say, your job isn't going to be here Monday morning unless you take this medical procedure. So here in Canada, I'm sure all around the world, a lot of people are like, well, I guess I better. I mean, I got to eat. I got a family to feed. In the military, let's say you were sergeant, an NCO position of chief warrant officer, like sergeant major, like all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I got 20 years in. I don't want to blow my career. I love it. A lot of people are like, look, I don't want to there's mandatory retirement in Canada for the CAF is 60. Maybe some people are like, hey man, I'm going to work my way up to chief warrant officer, and I'm going to retire when I'm 60, and just what about those guys? They're in their 40s, young family maybe, or in their 30s. Like you got to do it. So your options were forced medical procedure to keep your job. And so a lot of people did it. Some people in the Canadian military didn't. They opted out, and we lost a lot of good people. Now the Canadian military is, well, now you can rejoin, but it's too far gone. Trust. And the people that did take that now see, the whole picture now, because it's now, as I make this video, it's mid-January 2024, and there's a lot of resentment towards politicians for Mr. 19 and for Iraq and Afghanistan. You can go far back as Vietnam. Why are the levels of recruitment down in Canada? But 10,000. We're short 10,000 personnel in Canada. Okay, that's a lot of people. That's 1 in 10. 1 in 10 careers, jobs at the CAF isn't filled. That's huge. Okay, and I hear generals like saying, "Well, you're not combat ready if you're down 10%." Maybe you military people watching can confirm that. If you're, if your platoon's ordered into battle and you're, 10% of your platoon is, deleted or in a hospital or not there, I don't know how. I'm hearing that, that's not good to go into combat or anything. If you need a certain amount of dentists and doctors and radiologists and whatever professions, they're down, and you don't have those people back there to back you up. What do you do? So I get back to the 1973. Well, I keep hearing this. Recruitment's down since 1973. Well, what was happening in 1973 in America? A war that people were like, I don't believe in this. I don't, for whatever reason, okay? Maybe someone could come out and explain Vietnam in a way that's was justified. I don't know. But by 1973, they're like, well, we can't draft anyone. Trying to get people in here. Like, you got high-profile people like Muhammad Ali saying, I'm not going. And he's not running to Canada. He's going to take his punishment there. And I was like, okay. More people start saying, well, why are we going to Vietnam? And it was people say Vietnam was a real foobar, and so by 1973, people are like, I'm not going to fight for politicians and in a war that, is it justified? And that was the problem. People's trust in politicians in 1973 was like, no, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to go to war for you. It just didn't feel like it was morally ethical. It wasn't justified. It wasn't a justified war. And politicians lost out on that. They lost out the hearts and the minds and souls of people then. So, you fast forward now, and this is a problem, as far as I can tell, from at least 2022. So, it's a 50-year span from Vietnam recruitments until now in 2024. And if you're like in Canadian military and you're 10,000 people short and you're not getting those ranks filled, it's like, okay, the following year it's going to be even worse. 11,000, 12,000. It's just going to get worse if you just don't have the people coming in. And how do you do that? You're going to have to rebuild trust. And when you lose trust, whether it's, in your place of work, your relationship, whatever, you lose trust in someone or an institution, man, that's tough sledding. You got tough sledding to rebuild trust. And do I have any answers for that? Like I try to come up with some solutions here during this video, and I'll read some more of my solutions. But trust and wars that just don't seem to be justified. Iraq, Afghanistan, who wants to be 20 or 50 years old? Since older people in the military joining or have been there for a long time go, I just don't know. I don't know. Are you going to send me to another Iraq or Afghanistan? People are like, man, so how many moral objectors can you have in the military before the military's like, I guess we can't go to this new conflict we want to do because there's too many moral objectors, or there's just not enough people. We're down. You're down. Your military's too small because you don't have the people on the bases, like those important people. Like, again, the dentist. It's like having a dentist office in the town. Let's say wherever you live, there's no dentists for, like you got to drive 2 hours or something ridiculous. It's hard to operate, right? Well, how about a military base that maybe only has one dentist in it? I don't know how many people are on a base, and maybe you don't have. You have to have the personnel, or else you can't go over and do your military operations. And, I think, again, the other elephant in the room is Mr. 19 and people's trust in politicians. You got, so Iraq, Afghanistan, morally or ethically, were they justified? You can go far as back as Vietnam. And again, Mr. 19, people don't trust politicians. They're like, I don't know if I trust them on this. And especially, too, when you're told, get this medical procedure, your job is gone. Your job is gone. And I've talked to many people in industries, trucking industry for one, where people are like, I can't, I'm 50 years old. I got kids, maybe some of them are in college. I got to help pay for them, got a mortgage to pay for. And your livelihood is being threatened with use of violence, probably some kind of punishment, unless you take a certain medical procedure. So, and now in 2024 people are saying like, that's just wrong. You threatened us, so trust gone. Another thing too, and I want to point out too, this comes back into the whole trust issue and with politicians and whatnot, and wanting to join a military to serve them because they're liars, is the social contracts that we have, whether you're in the UK, Canada, or America. The social contracts at first with Mr. 19 were, especially here in Canada, was completely null and void. It's like, you're in Canada, we have something called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Well, it's basically was just used as a napkin for politicians to wipe the juicy tomato sauce off their face. Just like Denethor biting that tomato. That's what they used for. The social contracts. So people are like, look, in times of emergency, that's when, I think you should have your rights and freedoms. And if it's going to be done by social contracts, then what would stop a politician or politicians anywhere in the world from having emergencies? Now that they've seen it, they're like, we can do this. We got like at least 90% of the world's population to do what we say, and we took away these social contracts. And that's when you need your social contract, is in times of emergency. But politicians throughout time immemorial have suspended those, rights that. I have challenges with a social contract. I think the world's best social contract would come from America, but even they had problems with their social contract. But like here in Canada, it was null and void. And, because I don't sign the contract, I'm supposed to adhere to it. And I'm like, okay, I'll adhere to it. But if you're going to suspend it, Mr. Politicians, in times of, emergency, well, what good is it? What good is the social contract? So trust from institutions like government, which, run by politicians, all-time low since Mr. 19 came out. And then you get back to, again, the people questioning, why would I join a military when you're just going to send me to a war with no purpose? Iraq, Afghanistan, how many? It's got to be in the millions of people that were affected by that war in the worst way possible, being deleted. Or and then you think of the people that are now in maybe, in a wheelchair. Their lives are completely affected because they were maimed for a war. And these people that want to join the military, that would join the military, are just saying, no, I don't want to be sent into another conflict with no purpose. That's not justified. And if you're going, and again, what you get into the military now, you join it, you say, well, okay, I don't know, maybe I'll join a career that's not going to be in the front lines. You're not a combat soldier. But then they go, well, then it goes back to the whole, well, look what happened during the whole pandemic, and people were threatened saying you're going to be fired unless you take a medical procedure. So that's in people's minds too. And how do you do this? Trust. You have to rebuild trust. And I don't... solutions to that one, Mr. Recruiters or Miss Recruiters watching, politicians, officers, generals, whatever. I don't know how you rebuild that trust. You definitely cannot suspend social contracts during an emergency. You can't threaten people's livelihoods by saying you'll be fired if you don't take a medical procedure. Especially when in the Canadian military, you didn't have to get an influenza shot. That's always been voluntary. My 20 years of service and working in 7 hospitals in Canada in various departments, ERs and ORs and whatnot, it was never mandatory. They're like, hey, go get the... No, I never got it. I got sick twice in my 20 years of working. I just took the time off. So you can't do this. You cannot do this. You cannot threaten someone's job. Whatever emergencies, the next emergency that happens. Politicians, you cannot threaten people's livelihoods by saying you'll be fired if you don't do what we say. Especially when it comes to medical procedures like that. Especially too, like and so many people took it, and I feel badly for them, but I understand why they took it. It's like, hey, I gotta eat. I gotta, pay for everything, right? I understand it, but it left a bad taste and resentment in people's mouths for politicians. Politicians, people's level of trust for you it's probably worse than 1973. Because back then, the same situation when it comes to war, but they didn't have the extra level of, hey, your social contract's going to be suspended, your job won't be there, you'll be fired if you don't take medical procedures. So it's like it's like the Vietnam War times a million. It's worse. So yeah, how do you get people in? Well, I said at the beginning of this video, which is now over half an hour, and I'm glad if you're still here because I just love talking. It's been a while since a couple weeks at least since I made a video. But that being said, promote how much you can make. You join the Canadian Armed Forces. I've looked into it. I think it's pretty good. If you're you're 18 years old and you can make. Privates are 38,000. Okay, then it progressively goes up. If you work hard and you enjoy the job, the pay is going to be there. The starting 4-week paid vacation, $30,000 for paid education. If you lived on base, that's got to be a bonus. Housing and food. I just think that joining the military, especially in Canada, or anywhere really, is a good thing to do. Go and do it. I think the pay, the benefits, the education's there. And again, if you're afraid to go into combat, that's fine. Nobody, you just want to go, and you don't have to take combat roles. There's dental hygienists. There's vehicle technicians. There's so many jobs that you can do in the military that aren't going to put you on the front line. And if you take a deployment in those careers, I'm pretty sure you're fairly safe on your base. So push that, recruiters. Other than that, you got tough sledding. If you're a military recruiter, you're a politician, you've got tough sledding. I mean, you're sledding uphill, coated by molasses, man, and jagged rocks, because you have lost people's trust. And that is what you need to talk about, recruiters. And I hear nobody, politicians, generals, officers of all ranks, and recruiters, you are not talking about the elephants in the room. And that's trust. Trust. You have to, I don't know how you make people, I don't know how you change the hearts and minds to get them the trust back there. You need to convince them that, I don't know, and you have to be honest about it, that deployments are beneficial. Explain to them. If someone says to you, well, justify Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan to me. As a recruiter, politician, officer, you got to bang, bang, bang. You got to be able to justify all that, okay? You have to be able to answer those questions. Other than that, I don't know how. Well, I know in Canada, too, they've implemented a program for the CAF that you don't have to be a citizen of Canada anymore to join the military. You can be a permanent resident. And they've also increased the retirement age. Well, the retirement age in 2004 in the CAF was 55. So then they bumped it up to 60. So I don't know how long recruiting problems have been a challenge in Canada. I think because of Afghanistan and whatnot, maybe they thought they'd like to have the mandatory retirement age up because they needed someone maybe in their mid-50s who maybe not as good as a 20-year-old physically, but mentally they have a lot to offer. So I think that's a thing that the Canadian military has done now. And I know as of today, I make this video, you can join the Canadian military up to the age of 57, and mandatory retirement 60. So I don't know if someone wanted to get into 57, sure. I think older people, guys my age, have something to offer. We have a lot of experience, and if you can get yourself whipped into shape at 50 years old, go for it. I think it would be a good opportunity to join the military. But again, let's say someone my age, 51, goes, hey, I'm just, I'm feeling physically good. I'm mentally sharp. I can do it. You go, I don't know. Like, I get in. Are they going to tell me 2 years from now that, hey, medical procedure or you're fired? It's like, oh my God. Like, that's a huge hill of trust that it's been destroyed. And again, deployments. If you're afraid of combat, then go into a career that's not going to be in the front lines. Again, Canadian CAF, I was quite impressed the last few weeks. I've been looking at their career opportunities. There's 101 of them. Career you could choose from, and they're not all combat situations. So if that's something that's on your mind, don't worry. I don't think you should worry about that. I think the pay is pretty good. If you're joining as an NCO, non-commissioned officer. I think the pay is pretty good, and I haven't looked into the officer's pay, but I can tell you right now that in the CFA, a chief warrant officer is making $105,000 a year. That's like the highest ranking NCO in the Canadian military. So I'm like looking at that going, with that, it'll probably take you a while to get up to that position, but the other positions are fairly competitive in the wages up there. So yeah, I would look into that. I would look into that if you're serious about that. You want to learn, um, paid education and whatnot. But I think as a recruiter, you're just missing the big elephants in the room, and that's trust and just moral justification for wars that people just go. I don't know if there's a purpose to that. What was the purpose? I don't want to be sent to another Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam. How do you change the hearts and minds of people of that to do? So those are the challenges that you have, and got to start talking about them, Mr. Recruiters and politicians. I'd like to see politicians come out and apologize for Mr. 19 as well. I have yet to see any Canadian politician or UK or American politician, for that matter, come out and say, we're sorry. We shouldn't have suspended social contracts. We shouldn't have threatened people with their livelihoods by saying, you don't get a medical procedure, you're fired. I would, you want to rebuild trust. There's one way, Mr. Politicians. Sincerely apologize for Mr. 19. That would help. And recruiters, you need to polish up on your, justifications for these wars and whatnot. And again, push over all those talking points I had. Don't take a combat position then. Become a dental hygienist, a dentist, whatever. Pay, benefits. I know I hear it's strange too. You hear recruiters go, we try to push that, and it doesn't seem to interest people. I'm like, I don't know. As a 50-year-old guy here, I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I think it's pretty good pay. Pretty good. You're 18 years old. I think, geez, I should have done that when I was 18. Obviously, the pay wouldn't have been as good. All relative to inflation and whatnot. I think it would have been pretty good as an 18-year-old. Could have lived on base, taken some paid education. I think it would have been great for a young person to do. So push that. But anyways, you people got recruiters, generals, politicians. You got to work on that trust. You got to work on that trust for those issues of social contracts, telling people you're going to be fired from your job. You got a lot of apologizing and trust building, okay? And a lot of moral justification for wars that have happened since 1973. Because apparently, recruiting's as low today as it was in 1973. Well, why? People didn't want to go to Vietnam. They didn't have any just moral or ethical justification for that war. And then throw on top, hey, you'll be fired if you don't take a medical procedure. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Over 40 minutes now. If you've made it this far, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who comes here and listens to my what grinds my gears, I guess. Hopefully I give some solutions. And thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.